I've built things my whole life. Concrete, steel, lumber, materials you can trust, materials that don't lie to you. If you mix the concrete wrong, it crumbles. If you cut the beam short, the structure fails. There's honesty in construction, a brutal kind of truth that I've always appreciated. People, though, people are different. They smile while the foundation rots beneath your feet. My name is Victor Foster, and I'm 50 years old. I run Foster & Sons Construction, a company my father started 40 years ago with nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox. When he died, I was 25, barely old enough to know which end of a hammer to hold, but I learned fast. Had to. The business kept food on the table for my wife Laura and our son Nathan, who was just a baby then. Now Nathan's 28, married, and according to every conversation I've had with him in the past 6 months, utterly miserable with the life I've given him. The realization hit me over pot roast on a Tuesday night. Laura had set the dining room table with her good china, the stuff we only used for holidays and special occasions. I should have known something was wrong right then. Nathan and his wife Jessica were coming over, and Laura always went overboard when Jessica was involved, as if proper dinnerware could smooth over the tension that hung in the air whenever the four of us gathered in the same room. I was in my office when they arrived, reviewing bid proposals for the Henderson project. The office is really just a converted bedroom at the back of our house, walls lined with filing cabinets and blueprints, the desk buried under paperwork that never seems to diminish no matter how many hours I spend clearing it. Through the window, I watched Nathan's BMW pull into the driveway, a car he couldn't afford on what I paid him, though I'd never said that out loud. Jessica had family money, the kind that came with expectations and a sense of entitlement that made my jaw clench every time she walked into a room. "Victor," Laura called from the kitchen. "They're here." I saved the document I'd been working on and headed toward the front of the house. Nathan was already inside, hugging his mother while Jessica stood in the entryway, her perfectly manicured hand resting on her designer handbag. She wore a white dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill in heels that clicked on the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. "Victor," she said, offering me a smile that never reached her eyes. "Thank you for having us." "It's your house as much as mine," I said, which wasn't true but seemed like the polite thing to say. "Nathan grew up here." Something flickered across her face, annoyance, maybe, or disdain. It was gone before I could identify it properly. "Dinner smells amazing, Mom," Nathan said, following Laura into the kitchen. He'd inherited my build, broad-shouldered and solid, but lately he'd started carrying himself differently. Smaller, like he was trying to take up less space in the world. We settled around the dining table, Laura serving pot roast and roasted vegetables while making cheerful conversation about nothing in particular. The weather, the new restaurant downtown, the Hendersons' upcoming anniversary party, safe topics, carefully chosen to avoid the minefield of real issues that lay beneath the surface of our family dynamics. Jessica picked at her food, cutting her meat into tiny pieces she barely ate. "This is lovely, Laura," she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "Very traditional?" Laura beamed, missing the subtle insult entirely. "Victor's favorite. I've been making this recipe for 30 years. "How wonderful," Jessica said. "Tradition is so important." I watched her across the table, noting the way she touched Nathan's arm when she wanted his attention, the subtle redirections whenever the conversation threatened to veer toward topics she didn't control. I'd seen manipulative people before, contractors who tried to lowball suppliers, clients who attempted to renegotiate after work was completed, but Jessica operated on a different level. Everything she did was calculated, precise, designed to achieve a specific outcome. "How's the business, Dad?" Nathan asked, and I caught the slight grimace that crossed his face as he said it. "Busy," I said. "The Henderson project starts next month. Commercial job, good money. I was hoping you could take the lead on it." Nathan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "I don't know if I'll have time. There's a lot going on right now." "Like what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "You're working 40 hours a week, same as everyone else on the crew." Jessica's hand found Nathan's arm again, her fingers curling around his wrist. "Nathan's been thinking about exploring other opportunities," she said smoothly. "He's talented, Victor. There's a big world out there beyond this town." The pot roast turned to sawdust in my mouth. I swallowed carefully, then set down my fork. "Other opportunities?" "Just thinking about it," Nathan said quickly. "Nothing definite." "What kind of opportunities?" I pressed. Laura cleared her throat. "Victor, maybe this isn't the best time." "I'd like to know," I said, my eyes fixed on my son. "If my son is planning to leave the family business, I think I have a right to understand why." Jessica's smile sharpened. "It's not about leaving, Victor. It's about growth. Surely you can understand that. You built this business from the ground up. You must have wanted more than what your father left you." I wanted to honor what he built, I said. That's what you do with a legacy. You protect it, grow it, yes, but you don't abandon it. No one's abandoning anything, Nathan said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable silence, punctuated by Laura's increasingly desperate attempts at conversation. By the time dessert arrived, apple pie, another family favorite that Jessica barely touched, I could feel the tension like a physical weight pressing down on the table. After they left, Laura started clearing dishes, her movements sharp and efficient. You didn't have to interrogate him, she said. I wasn't interrogating. I was asking questions. You were pushing. You always push, Victor. I grabbed a stack of plates and carried them to the kitchen. Something's wrong, Laura. Can't you see it? He's different. Ever since he married her. Don't. Laura spun around, her eyes flashing. Don't blame Jessica for everything. Nathan's a grown man. He makes his own choices. Does he? I set the plates down harder than I'd intended. Because from where I'm sitting, she makes all his choices for him. Laura didn't respond. She turned back to the sink, running water over the dishes, and I knew the conversation was over. I went back to my office and tried to focus on work, but my mind kept circling back to the dinner, to Nathan's avoidance, to Jessica's calculated comments about growth and opportunities. The clock on my desk ticked past midnight before I finally gave up and went to bed. 3 days later, I was at the construction site, reviewing the foundation work for a residential project, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Foster? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. This is Jennifer Matthews from Caldwell & Associates. I'm an attorney representing your son, Nathan Foster. The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. What's this about? I'm calling as a courtesy to inform you that Nathan has initiated proceedings to dissolve the partnership structure of Foster & Sons Construction. As majority owner, you'll be receiving formal documentation within the next few days, but I wanted to reach out personally to... Wait. My grip on the phone tightened. Dissolve the partnership? What the hell are you talking about? Nathan holds a 25% stake in the company, as I'm sure you're aware. He's requesting to liquidate his shares and exit the business. 25%. I'd given him that stake 3 years ago on his wedding day. A gift, I'd called it. An investment in his future, in the business's future. Now he was trying to cash out. Let me talk to my son, I said. I'm afraid I can't facilitate that, Mr. Foster. My client has requested all communication go through our office. Your client is my son? Nevertheless, I hung up. My hand was shaking. Around me, the construction site continued its normal rhythm. Hammers striking nails, the whine of a circular saw, workers calling to each other across the framework of walls that didn't exist yet. Everything normal, everything the same as it had been 5 minutes ago, except my son had just tried to gut my business from the inside. I called Nathan. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. On the third attempt, he answered. Dad, I can't talk right now. Then make time, I said. What the hell is this about dissolving the partnership? Silence on the other end of the line. I could hear background noise, traffic, voices, the ambient sound of a city that wasn't our small town. Where are you? I asked. It doesn't matter. It matters to me? Are you with her? If you mean my wife, yes. We're looking at properties. Properties. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. You're leaving. We're considering our options. Nathan, we need to talk about this, face to face, man to man. There's nothing to talk about, Dad. I've made my decision. No, I said. She made your decision. Jessica wants out of this town, and she's using you to finance her escape. That's not... He stopped, and I heard a woman's voice in the background. Jessica, I have to go. Nathan. I stood there in the middle of the construction site, phone in hand, trying to process what had just happened. 28 years. I'd spent 28 years raising that boy, teaching him everything I knew, building something for him to inherit, and he was going to throw it away for a woman who looked at our town like it was something she'd scraped off her shoe. Frank Martinez, my site foreman, approached with a clipboard. Boss, we've got a question about the electrical routing. I blinked, forcing myself back to the present. Show me. Work was the only thing that made sense anymore. Concrete, steel, lumber, materials that didn't lie. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. The next morning I woke before dawn and couldn't fall back asleep. Laura was curled on her side, breathing softly, oblivious to the churning in my mind. I slipped out of bed, dressed in the dark, and drove to the office while the town was still sleeping. Foster & Sons Construction operated out of a modest building on the edge of town, part office, part warehouse, with a yard out back for equipment and materials. I'd bought the property 15 years ago, when the business finally had enough steady work to justify a real headquarters instead of running everything from my home office. The sign out front had been Nathan's idea, Foster & Sons, with a silhouette of a hammer and level. Sons, plural, even though he was an only child. It sounds more established, he'd said at the time, and I'd agreed, now that plural felt like mockery. I unlocked the front door and flipped on the lights. The office smelled like coffee and sawdust, familiar and comforting. My desk sat in the corner, buried under the usual avalanche of paperwork. Invoices, permits, contracts, blueprints. Everything physical, everything real. I'd built this business with my hands, with sweat and determination and 30 years of 16-hour days. The thought of Nathan trying to tear it apart made something dark and furious coil in my chest. I booted up my computer and started digging through company files, partnership agreements, operating documents, shareholder records. Nathan held 25% of the company. I'd structured it that way as a gift, with plans to transfer more shares over time as he proved himself capable of running things. But the operating agreement included protections. I'd insisted on them when my attorney drafted the paperwork, over Nathan's objections at the time. Any partner wanting to exit had to offer their shares to remaining partners first, at fair market value. The company had right of first refusal, which meant Nathan couldn't just sell to an outside party without giving me the option to buy him out. Fair market value. That was the problem. The business was worth around $2 million, maybe 2.5 on a good day. 25% of that was $500,000, give or take. Money I didn't have liquid. Money I'd have to borrow, probably by leveraging the business itself as collateral. My phone buzzed, a text from Nathan. "We need to talk. Can we meet?" I stared at the message, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. Part of me wanted to refuse, to make him sweat, to let him know that betrayal had consequences. But another part, the part that still remembered teaching him to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to read a blueprint, needed to understand why. I typed back, when and where. His response came quickly. Luigi's. Noon. Luigi's was a pizza place downtown, neutral territory, public enough that we couldn't make a scene, private enough for a real conversation. I agreed and spent the rest of the morning trying to focus on work, reviewing the Henderson project specs, returning calls from suppliers, checking in with the crew at the residential site. At 11:30, I drove to Luigi's. The lunch crowd hadn't arrived yet, just a few early birds scattered across the red vinyl booths. I chose a table in the back corner and ordered coffee I didn't drink, watching the door. Nathan arrived at noon. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He slid into the booth across from me and didn't meet my eyes. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "Did I have a choice?" He flinched. "Dad, please. This is hard enough." "Hard for who, exactly? You're the one trying to gut the family business." A waitress appeared, young and cheerful, oblivious to the tension crackling between us. We ordered, pizza we probably wouldn't eat, and she disappeared back to the kitchen. "I'm not trying to gut anything," Nathan said quietly. "I just need to make a change. For me, for my marriage." "Your marriage." I leaned back, studying him. "Let me guess. Jessica wants to move somewhere bigger, somewhere more exciting than this backwater town." "It's not like that." "Then what's it like? Explain it to me, because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're throwing away everything we've built together because your wife thinks she's too good for the life you have here." Nathan's jaw tightened. "You don't know her, Dad. You've never given her a chance. I know she's been pushing you away from this family since the day you married her. I know she looks at this town like it's something to be endured, not lived in. And I know that before Jessica came along, you never once mentioned wanting to leave. People change. I'm allowed to want different things." "Different things," I repeated, "like abandoning your father's legacy, like destroying what I've spent 3 decades building?" "It's not about you." The words burst out of him, loud enough that a couple at a nearby table glanced over. Nathan lowered his voice. "Can't you see that? Everything doesn't revolve around you and what you want. I have my own life, my own dreams. Dreams Jessica planted in your head. Stop blaming her for everything. I make my own decisions." "Do you?" I leaned forward. Because the Nathan I raised wouldn't blindside his father with a lawyer's phone call. He'd have the guts to have a conversation first. Nathan's face went red. "I tried to talk to you at dinner. You shut me down." "I asked questions. That's not shutting you down." "You interrogated me like I was on trial. You always do this, Dad. You push and push until everyone around you bends to what you want. Well, I'm done bending. The pizza arrived. We both ignored it. If you want out, I said carefully, I'll buy your shares. It'll take time to arrange the financing, but I'll make it happen. Nathan shook his head. That's not going to work. Why not? The operating agreement gives me right of first refusal. You can't sell to anyone else without offering to me first. I know what the agreement says, Dad. My lawyer explained it. Then what's the problem? He hesitated, and in that moment, I knew. Whatever he was about to say would be bad. Jessica and I have been in talks with someone, he said, about purchasing my stake in the company. Who? Titan Development. Titan Development. The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Titan was the corporate competitor I'd been fighting against for years, a massive construction conglomerate that had been systematically buying up smaller companies in the region, swallowing family businesses like mine and homogenizing them into faceless subsidiaries. You've got to be kidding me, I said. They made a good offer, better than fair market value. They're vultures, Nathan. They destroy everything they touch. They'll strip this business for parts and fire everyone who's been loyal to us for decades. They promise to keep the existing workforce. And you believe them? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Jesus Christ, Nathan. When did you get so naive? It's business, Dad. That's all. It's betrayal. That's what it is. Nathan stood up, his face flushed with anger and something else. Guilt, maybe, or shame. I'm trying to do what's best for my family. Can't you understand that? Your family. I gestured at the space between us. I'm your family. Your mother is your family. The guys on the crew who've worked with us for 20 years, who came to your birthday parties when you were a kid, they're family. But you're willing to destroy all of that for her. I love her, Dad. The words hung in the air between us, simple and devastating. Then God help you, I said. Nathan left. I sat there in the booth, surrounded by the lunch crowd that had filtered in, normal people having normal days while my world crumbled. The pizza sat untouched between us, cooling and congealing, a perfect metaphor for the meal we'd never eat together again. I called my attorney from the parking lot. Richard Powell had been handling my legal work for 15 years, a competent guy who specialized in small business law. He listened while I explained the situation, occasionally making non-committal sounds that could have meant anything. Can they do this? I asked. Can Nathan sell to Titan without offering to me first? Not legally, Richard said. Your operating agreement is clear. You have right of first refusal on any sale. If Nathan wants out, he has to give you the opportunity to match any offer he receives. Then we'll enforce it. Victor, there's something you should know. If Nathan is talking to Titan, they've already reviewed your operating agreement. They have lawyers, good ones. They wouldn't make an offer unless they thought they had a way around your protections. What kind of way around? Hard to say without seeing their proposal, but Titan has a reputation for finding loopholes. They might structure the deal differently, maybe purchasing the company as a whole instead of just Nathan's shares, or they could argue that Nathan's stake gives them a foothold to make a takeover offer. A takeover? I own 75% of this company, which means they'd need your consent. But if they can convince Nathan to vote with them on key decisions, they could make your life very difficult, force you out through attrition. I closed my eyes, leaning against my truck. The afternoon sun beat down on the parking lot, heat radiating up from the asphalt. What do I do? First, I'll send a cease and desist to Nathan's attorney. Make it clear that any sale without offering to you first is a breach of contract. Second, you need to consider whether you actually want to buy him out. Can you afford it? I'll make it work. Victor, $500,000 is a lot of money. If you have to leverage the business to borrow it, you're putting everything at risk. One bad project, one lawsuit, and you could lose it all. Then I'll be careful not to have a bad project. Richard sighed. I'll draft the letter, but you should prepare yourself. If Nathan is determined to leave, and Jessica is pushing him, this could get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. I drove back to the office and tried to work, but concentration was impossible. My mind kept circling back to Nathan, to Jessica, to the look on my son's face when he told me he loved her, as if love excused betrayal, as if emotion could justify tearing apart everything I'd built. Laura called around 3. Nathan stopped by the house, she said. He told me about your lunch. What did he say? That you were unreasonable, that you called Jessica names. I didn't call her anything. I stated facts. Victor. She trailed off, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. He's our son. Whatever's happening, he's still our son. I know that. Do you? Because the way you're acting, it seems like you've already written him off. He's the one walking away, Laura, not me. He's 28 years old and trying to build his own life. That's what kids do. They grow up and leave. There's leaving, and then there's burning down the house on your way out the door. She didn't respond for a moment. Then, come home, please. We need to talk about this. I can't. Not right now. I hung up before she could argue, immediately feeling guilty but unable to face going home, to sitting across from Laura and pretending everything could be fixed with conversation. Some things were broken beyond repair. Frank called at 4. Boss, we've got a problem at the residential site. I welcomed the distraction. What kind of problem? Inspector red-tagged the electrical work. Says it doesn't meet code. I rubbed my eyes. That's impossible. We use the same electrician we always use. He knows the code backwards and forwards. That's what I told him. But he's not budging. Says we need to rip it out and start over. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The residential site was a sprawling development on the north side of town. 15 houses in various stages of completion. I found Frank arguing with a building inspector I didn't recognize, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a clipboard he wielded like a weapon. Mr. Foster, he said, not offering a handshake, your electrical work is substandard. I'm shutting you down until it's corrected. I examined the work in question. It looked perfect to me, every wire properly secured, every junction box correctly installed. This meets code. I've been building houses for 30 years, and this is textbook installation? Nevertheless, it's inadequate. He made a note on his clipboard. You have 7 days to correct the violations, or I'll pull your permit. Something about the way he said it made my instincts flare. Who are you? I've never seen you at an inspection before. I'm new to the area, transferred in from the city. What city? Does it matter? It did matter, suddenly and urgently. I took the clipboard from his hands and read his identification. Gerald Klein, building inspector, hired 6 months ago by the county, and at the bottom of the page, in smaller print, previous employment, Titan Development, senior project manager. Everything clicked into place. You used to work for Titan, I said. I don't see how that's relevant. It's extremely relevant. You're red-tagging my work to create problems for my business. Who put you up to this? Jessica? Titan? Klein's face remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm simply doing my job, Mr. Foster. If you have concerns about my inspection, you're welcome to file a complaint with the county board. I'll do more than that. I took photos of everything. The electrical work, Klein's identification, the red tag he'd placed on the panel box. Frank watched with confusion, not understanding what was happening, not seeing the bigger picture. Back in my truck, I called Richard again. They're coming at me from all sides, I said, and explained about the inspection. Can you prove the inspector is biased? He used to work for Titan. That's not bias, that's conspiracy. In court, you'd need more than a previous employment connection, but it's worth documenting. File a complaint with the county, request a second inspection from a different official, and Victor, watch your back. If they're playing this dirty, it's going to get worse before it gets better. He was right. I just didn't know how much worse it would become. The days after the hearing blurred together in a haze of legal consultations, business meetings, and difficult conversations. Nathan moved back in with us temporarily, taking up residence in his old room while his lawyer handled the divorce proceedings. Jessica had disappeared, skipping town before the DA could bring charges, but her attorney assured us she'd surface eventually. People like her always did. Laura threw herself into taking care of Nathan, cooking his favorite meals and pretending not to notice when he spent hours staring at nothing. I gave him space, understanding that some wounds needed time to even begin healing. The business stabilized. With the injunction in place, Titan Development backed off, their carefully orchestrated acquisition falling apart. I met with each of my employees individually, assuring them that Foster & Sons wasn't going anywhere, that their jobs were secure. Frank clapped me on the shoulder and said he'd never doubted it, but the victory felt hollow. I'd saved my business and exposed Jessica's fraud, but I'd lost something too. My relationship with Nathan was fractured, maybe beyond repair. He was polite now, even grateful, but the easy warmth we'd once shared was gone. He'll come around, Laura said one evening, finding me in my office staring at old photographs. Give him time. How much time does it take to forgive your father for being right? That's not what he needs to forgive you for. He needs to forgive you for not trusting him to figure it out himself. I turned to look at her. If I'd waited for him to figure it out, Jessica would have disappeared with $1 million, and Titan would own my business. Maybe, or maybe Nathan would have seen through her eventually. You'll never know now, because you didn't give him the chance. She left me with that thought, uncomfortable and unwelcome. Was she right? Had I robbed Nathan of the opportunity to be his own person, to make his own mistakes and learn from them? But looking at the evidence Kate had compiled, at the cold calculation in Jessica's emails, I couldn't convince myself that waiting would have been the right choice. Some predators don't let go voluntarily. 2 weeks after the hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Mr. Foster?" A man's voice, cultured and professional. "This is Robert Chen from Titan Development." My grip on the phone tightened. "I have nothing to say to you. Please hear me out. I'm calling to apologize. What happened with Jessica? That wasn't supposed to be how this played out." "How was it supposed to play out? You hire a con artist to seduce my son, destroy my family, and steal my business, but somehow there was a version of this that was okay? I understand your anger. You have every right to it, but I want you to know that Jessica exceeded her mandate. She was supposed to gather intelligence, not manipulate your son into marriage. That was her idea, her initiative. And you just went along with it. I did, and I regret that now. For what it's worth, we're cutting all ties with Jessica. She'll never work in this industry again. You're calling for absolution? You won't get it from me." "I'm not calling for absolution. I'm calling to propose a business arrangement." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "You have got to be kidding." "Hear me out. Titan Development is still interested in working with Foster & Sons. Not an acquisition, a partnership. You maintain control, we provide capital for expansion. There's a lot of money to be made if we cooperate instead of compete." "The answer is no." "Mr. Foster, the answer is no, will always be no, and if you call me again, I'll file a restraining order. We're done here." I hung up, my heart pounding. The audacity of Chen calling me, trying to salvage his plan after everything that had happened, was staggering, but it also told me something important. Titan was desperate. They'd invested time and resources into acquiring my business, and now that investment had produced nothing. They were vulnerable. An idea began to form. I called Kate Morrison. "I need you to dig into Titan Development. Everything you can find, financial records, acquisition history, pending deals. I want to know where they're weak." "Planning a counterattack?" "Something like that. Can you do it?" "It'll take time. Titan's a big company with a lot of layers. But I'll see what I can find." While Kate investigated, I focused on strengthening Foster & Sons. I met with clients, secured new contracts, and made sure everyone knew we were still in business and stronger than ever. The Henderson project was progressing ahead of schedule, a visible demonstration of our competence. Nathan started coming to the office, not working exactly, but watching. He'd sit in the corner during meetings, observing how I negotiated with clients, how I managed the crew, the 1,000 small decisions that went into running a successful business. We didn't talk much, but his presence felt like progress. "Why do you do it?" he asked me one evening after everyone else had gone home. "Do what?" "All of this. The long hours, the stress, the constant fighting to keep everything afloat. What's the point?" I considered the question carefully. "Because it's mine. Because I built it from nothing. Because when I'm gone, I want to leave something behind that matters." "Does it matter, though? At the end of the day, it's just buildings. Just construction projects that'll eventually need to be torn down and rebuilt. It's not about the buildings. It's about what they represent. People's homes, businesses where they'll spend their working lives, places where families will gather. We're building the spaces where life happens. That matters." Nathan was quiet for a moment. "I never thought about it like that." "No, you thought about it like I did. Like your obligation, your burden. Jessica knew that. She used it." "I know." He stood up, stretching. "I'm going to head home. Mom's making dinner." "Nathan?" He stopped at the door. "Thank you for coming by." He nodded and left. It wasn't much, but it was something. Kate called a week later with news. "I've found something interesting about Titan. They're overextended." "What do you mean?" "They've been acquiring companies aggressively for the past 5 years, leveraging debt to finance the purchases. It's worked so far because the acquisitions have been profitable. But they've got several pending deals that are falling apart. The Henderson Group deal collapsed last month. The Morrison acquisition is stuck in regulatory hell. If one more major acquisition fails, they're going to have serious cash flow problems." "How serious?" "Serious enough that they might have to start selling assets. Maybe even face bankruptcy if things go really wrong." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's very interesting information." "I thought you'd think so. What are you planning?" "I'm not sure yet, but I'll let you know." I spent the next few days thinking, planning, considering angles. Titan had tried to destroy my business by getting inside it, by using Jessica to manipulate Nathan and create an opening for acquisition. They'd failed, but they were still out there, still a threat to other small businesses like mine. What if I turned the tables? What if instead of defending, I attacked? I called a meeting with my attorney and my accountant. Richard and Tom Chen, no relation to Robert, listened as I outlined my idea. "It's risky," Tom said when I finished. "If this goes wrong, you could lose everything." "If I do nothing, I'm still at risk. Titan isn't going to forget about Foster and Sons. They'll wait, regroup, and come at us again. I'd rather fight on my terms." "What exactly are you proposing?" Richard asked. "Titan's overextended. They need liquidity, so we offer them a lifeline. We buy some of their struggling assets at a discount." Tom blinked. "You want to acquire part of Titan Development?" "Not the whole company. Just the pieces they can't afford to keep. The properties and projects that are dragging them down. We restructure, make them profitable, and suddenly we're not a small family business anymore. We're a regional player." "You'd need significant capital," Tom said. "Then we'll raise it. Bring in investors, secure loans, do whatever it takes. The opportunity is there. We just have to be bold enough to take it." Richard leaned back, considering. "It could work. If Titan's as desperate as Kate suggests, they might be willing to deal. But Victor, this changes everything. You'd no longer be running a family business. You'd be managing a complex corporate entity." "I know. But maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe it's time to evolve." We spent the next week working out the details. Tom ran financial projections, Richard drafted proposals, and I met with potential investors. The plan was audacious, maybe even crazy, but the numbers worked. If we could acquire Titan's struggling assets at the right price, we could triple our revenue within 2 years. Nathan found out about the plan by accident, walking into my office while Tom and I were reviewing projections. "What's all this?" he asked, looking at the spreadsheets covering my desk. I hesitated, then decided honesty was better than secrecy. "We're planning to acquire assets from Titan Development." His eyes widened. "You're going after them?" "In a manner of speaking. They're financially vulnerable right now. We're offering to buy properties and projects they can't afford to maintain." "That's brilliant," Nathan said slowly. "Use their weakness against them." "That's the idea." He studied the spreadsheets, his business degree finally showing some practical application. "You're going to need a lot of capital. Where are you getting it?" "Investors, mostly. We're putting together a consortium. Local business owners who've been burned by Titan's aggressive tactics in the past. Everyone wants a piece of this." "Can I help?" The question surprised me. "You want to be involved?" "I want to learn. I've been thinking about what you said, about the business being more than just buildings. Maybe I was wrong to walk away. Maybe I need to give this another chance." I looked at my son, seeing something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine interest. Not obligation, not resentment, but actual curiosity about the work. "Okay," I said. "Pull up a chair. Let's walk through this together." Over the next 3 weeks, Nathan and I worked side by side, developing the acquisition strategy. He had fresh ideas, questions that made me reconsider assumptions I'd held for years. Tom was impressed, Richard was cautiously optimistic, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The business was evolving. My relationship with Nathan was healing. And Titan Development, the corporate giant that had tried to destroy us, was about to learn that even small operations could bite back. We submitted our acquisition proposal on a Thursday afternoon. Robert Chen called me directly the next morning. "This is unexpected," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "You're offering to buy our Monroe Street development and the Riverside project?" "At fair market value. Both projects are behind schedule and over budget. They're dragging down your quarterly numbers. We can take them off your hands, and everyone benefits. And if we refuse, then you continue bleeding money while trying to salvage projects that are already failing. Your shareholders won't be happy about that, especially after the Henderson Group deal collapsed. How many more failures can Titan absorb before the board starts asking uncomfortable questions?" Silence on the other end of the line. I'd done my research, knew exactly how much pressure Chen was under. "We'll need to review the proposal with our team," he said finally. "Take your time. The offer's good for 48 hours. I hung up, feeling Nathan's eyes on me. "Was that Chen?" he asked. "It was. He's rattled." "Good. He should be." 2 days later, Titan's lawyers contacted Richard. They wanted to negotiate. The negotiations took place in a conference room at Richard's office, neutral ground that neither side could claim advantage from. I arrived early with Nathan and Tom, reviewing our position one last time before Titan's team showed up. "Remember," Richard said, "we're not desperate. They are. Don't let them flip the dynamic." At 10 a.m. precisely, Robert Chen walked through the door with 2 attorneys and a financial analyst. He'd aged since I'd last seen his photograph. New lines around his eyes, gray creeping into his temples. The stress of managing Titan's overextended empire was showing. "Mr. Foster," he said, extending a hand. "Thank you for meeting with us." I shook his hand, keeping my expression neutral. "Mr. Chen." His eyes moved to Nathan, and something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or discomfort. "Nathan, I didn't expect to see you here." "I work for my father's company," Nathan said coolly. "Where else would I be?" We settled around the conference table, 2 sides facing off over polished wood and legal pads. Chen's lead attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Rhodes, opened a folder. "We've reviewed your proposal," she said. "The offer for the Monroe Street development and Riverside project. Frankly, we find the valuation insulting." "The valuation is fair," Tom countered. "Both projects are significantly behind schedule and over budget. Monroe Street has foundation issues that'll cost at least $2 million to remediate. Riverside is facing environmental compliance problems that could delay completion by another year. We're actually being generous." Rhodes started to argue, but Chen held up a hand. "Let's not waste time posturing. We all know why we're here. Titan needs liquidity. You have capital to invest. The question is whether we can find terms that work for both parties." "What terms did you have in mind?" I asked. "We're willing to sell both properties, but not at your proposed price. Monroe Street is worth at least $20 million. Riverside, another 15. "Monroe Street is worth $12 million in its current condition," I said. "Maybe 18 after we fix the foundation problems. Riverside is worth 8, being generous. We'll go as high as 11 for Monroe and 10 for Riverside, but that's our ceiling." "That's ridiculous." "That's market reality," I interrupted. "You've got 3 choices, Mr. Chen. Sell to us at a reasonable price and stop the bleeding. Keep the properties and continue losing money every month they sit incomplete, or default on your loans and let the banks take them. Which option sounds best to your shareholders?" Chen's jaw tightened. "You're enjoying this." "I'm conducting business, same as you were when you sent Jessica to destroy my family." The room went silent. Rhodes glanced at Chen, clearly not aware of the full story behind our conflict. "That was a mistake," Chen said quietly. "One I've apologized for." "Apologies don't rebuild trust, but fair deals do. So here's my final offer. $20 million for both properties, all cash, close in 30 days. Take it or leave it." It was less than our ceiling, but more than our opening bid. A compromise that Chen could justify to his board while still giving us a good deal. Chen looked at his attorneys. Rhodes whispered something to him, covering her mouth with her hand. The financial analyst pulled up spreadsheets on his laptop, running calculations. "We need to caucus," Chen said finally. They left the conference room. I poured coffee from the pot Richard kept on a side table, my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Nathan was grinning. "That was incredible," he said. "Did you see his face when you brought up Jessica?" "That wasn't about revenge," I said, though it had felt good to remind Chen exactly what kind of man he was. "That was about establishing dominance. He needed to remember that we have nothing to lose and he has everything. Still, incredible." Titan's team returned after 20 minutes. Chen looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "We accept your offer," he said. $20 million for both properties, cash close in 30 days. "Pending satisfactory due diligence," I added. "Of course." Richard started drawing up the memorandum of understanding while the attorneys hashed out details. I watched Chen across the table, this man who'd orchestrated such chaos in my life, and felt something unexpected. Pity. He'd thought he was so powerful, his corporation so untouchable, and now he was selling assets to a small-town contractor to keep his empire from collapsing. "One more thing," I said as we prepared to sign the preliminary agreement. "Jessica Hartwell." Chen's expression went carefully blank. "What about her?" "The DA's office is still looking for her. If you know where she is, you're legally obligated to disclose that information. I haven't had contact with Ms. Hartwell since before your injunction hearing. And if that changes, then I'll follow the law." He met my eyes. "Contrary to what you might think, Mr. Foster, I'm not a criminal. I'm a businessman who made some questionable choices. I'm trying to do better. We'll see." The signing took another hour. When we finally walked out of Richard's office, I was $20 million poorer and the owner of 2 troubled development projects. Nathan was still grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "We did it," he said. "We actually did it." "We did. Now comes the hard part, making those projects profitable." "You really think we can turn them around?" "I know we can. Monroe Street just needs proper foundation work and competent project management. Riverside's environmental issues are paperwork problems, not real obstacles. We fix both, complete construction, and flip them for a profit. Maybe $30 million total if we're smart about it. Nathan's grin widened. That's a 50% return on investment. If everything goes according to plan, which it won't, there'll be complications, delays, unexpected costs. But even with problems, we should clear $8 to $10 million in profit. We drove back to the office where Frank and the rest of the crew were waiting for news. I'd told them about the potential acquisition, wanting them to hear it from me first. Well, Frank asked as soon as we walked in. We got it. Monroe Street and Riverside. Both projects are ours. Cheers erupted. Someone produced beer from the break room fridge. Frank clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to bruise. This is going to change everything, he said. We're not just a local operation anymore. No, I agreed, we're not. That night, Laura made a special dinner to celebrate. Nathan stayed, and for the first time in months, we ate together as a family without tension crackling through the air. Laura talked about redecorating the house, Nathan told stories about the negotiation, and I let myself relax for the first time in weeks. After dinner, Nathan and I retreated to my office. He sprawled in the chair across from my desk, comfortable in a way he hadn't been since before Jessica. I owe you an apology, he said suddenly. For what? For not believing you. About Jessica, about Titan, about everything. You tried to warn me, and I thought you were being controlling. You were in love. People do stupid things when they're in love. That's generous. I was an idiot. You were manipulated by a professional con artist. There's a difference. Nathan was quiet for a moment, picking at the label on his beer bottle. What happens now? With the business, I mean. Are you still planning to retire someday? Eventually. Why? Because I want to be ready. When that day comes, I want to be capable of running Foster & Sons the way it deserves to be run. Not just coasting on what you built, but actually leading it. I studied my son, seeing the determination in his face, the newfound maturity that came from hard lessons learned. Then I'll teach you, I said. Everything I know, but it won't be easy. You'll have to work harder than you've ever worked in your life. I'm ready. We'll see. Over the next week, we threw ourselves into the acquisition process. Due diligence revealed exactly what we'd expected. Monroe Street had serious foundation problems, Riverside was mired in regulatory paperwork, and both projects were bleeding money. But they were fixable problems, expensive, time-consuming, but fixable. I hired new project managers for both sites, veterans who knew how to salvage troubled developments. Frank took personal oversight of Monroe Street, while I focused on untangling Riverside's environmental compliance issues. Nathan rotated between both sites, learning by doing, asking questions, making himself useful. Kate Morrison called one afternoon with an update I hadn't expected. Jessica surfaced, she said. Where? Miami. She tried to access one of her bank accounts, and the DA's office got an alert. Local police picked her up this morning. Is she in custody? For now. She's fighting extradition, but she'll lose. Too much evidence. She'll be back in our jurisdiction within a week. The news should have brought satisfaction, but instead I felt only weariness. Jessica's arrest wouldn't undo the damage she'd caused, wouldn't give Nathan back the months he'd lost, wouldn't erase the pain of betrayal. Thanks for letting me know, I said. There's more. Chen provided a statement to the DA. He's cooperating fully, disclosed everything about their arrangement. Apparently he's trying to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony. Will he get it? Probably. He's a bigger fish than Jessica. If his testimony can reveal broader patterns of corporate fraud, the DA might be willing to deal. I thanked Kate and hung up, then sat staring at my desk for a long moment. Justice was happening. The system was working, but it all felt anticlimactic. The real victory had been exposing Jessica's fraud before she could complete her mission. Everything else was just paperwork. Nathan took the news about Jessica's arrest better than I'd expected. He nodded when I told him, said good, and went back to reviewing specifications for the Riverside project. He'd moved past her, I realized, moved past the betrayal and the hurt into something healthier. Indifference. 2 weeks after the acquisition closed, we got our first good news. The engineer I'd hired to review Monroe Street's foundation had found a solution that would cost half what we'd budgeted. Instead of completely replacing the foundation, we could reinforce existing structures with strategic improvements. The savings went straight to the bottom line. This is going to work, Tom said during our weekly financial review. All the numbers are trending right. If we can maintain this pace, you'll have both projects completed and sold within 18 months. And then? And then you're a wealthy man, wealthy enough to retire if you want. Buy that beach house Laura's always talked about. I thought about that. Retirement, leisure, days without crisis calls from job sites or fights with building inspectors. It sounded peaceful. It sounded boring. I'm not ready to retire yet, I said. Then what? More acquisitions? Turn this into an empire? Maybe. Or maybe I just want to build things. Same as I've always done, just on a bigger scale. Nathan, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. Why not both? Keep acquiring troubled projects from companies like Titan, turn them around, make a profit. Build an empire out of other people's failures. I looked at my son, surprised and impressed. That's actually not a bad idea. I have those sometimes, when I'm not being an idiot. We all laughed, the tension of recent months finally beginning to ease. Spring arrived with the kind of optimistic warmth that made everything feel possible. Monroe Street was ahead of schedule. Riverside had cleared its environmental reviews, and Foster & Sons was operating at capacity. I'd hired 10 new workers to handle the increased workload, and the office had grown from one person, me, to a staff of 5, including Nathan. My son had taken to the business with an enthusiasm that surprised even me. He was at the office before I arrived most mornings, stayed late reviewing plans, asked questions that demonstrated real engagement with the work. The kid who'd wanted to sell out and move to the city had transformed into someone who understood the value of what we were building. Laura noticed the change, too. He's happy, she said one evening, watching Nathan through the window as he loaded materials onto a truck. Really happy. I haven't seen him like this since before Jessica. Building things suits him. Turns out he's good at it. He learned from the best. I kissed the top of her head, grateful for her steadiness through all the chaos. She'd kept our family anchored when everything was falling apart, never wavering in her belief that we'd find our way through. The preliminary hearing for Jessica's fraud case was scheduled for April. The DA's office kept me informed of developments. Chen's testimony had been damning, the evidence overwhelming. Jessica's attorney was pushing for a plea deal, but the DA wanted to make an example. Corporate fraud was becoming an epidemic, and prosecuting a high-profile case would send a message. "Do you want to attend the hearing?" Richard asked me. "No, let Nathan decide if he wants to go. I'm done with Jessica Hartwell." Nathan chose not to attend. "I don't need to see her again," he said. "Everything I needed to know, I already learned." The hearing happened without us. Jessica pled guilty to fraud and conspiracy, received a 5-year sentence with possibility of parole after 3. It seemed both too much and not enough. Too much for a woman whose only real crime was being a mercenary, not enough for someone who'd caused such devastating harm. But justice wasn't mine to dispense. I had a business to run. By May, we'd turned Monroe Street around completely. The foundation issues were resolved, construction was progressing smoothly, and we had 3 potential buyers already expressing interest. Tom projected we could sell for $28 million, a stunning return on our $12 million investment. "That's a $16 million profit," Nathan said, staring at the numbers. "On one project, in 6 months. 7 months by the time we close," I corrected. "But yes, not bad." "Not bad? Dad, that's incredible. That's more profit than we made in the last 3 years combined." He wasn't wrong. The Titan acquisition had transformed Foster & Sons from a comfortable family business into something more ambitious. We weren't a small operation anymore. We were players. "So what's next?" Nathan asked. "Do we look for more acquisitions?" "Maybe. Let's finish these projects first, bank the profits, then decide." But even as I said it, I knew what came next. I'd gotten a taste of this new game, buying troubled assets, fixing them, flipping them for profit. And I wanted more. Not for the money, though that was nice. For the challenge. For the satisfaction of taking something broken and making it work. Frank retired that summer. He'd been talking about it for years, but the success of our recent projects convinced him to finally pull the trigger. We threw him a party at the office, everyone from current employees to guys he'd worked with decades ago. Frank gave a speech that was equal parts sentimental and sarcastic, thanking me for 30 years of headaches and paychecks. "What are you going to do with yourself?" I asked him privately. "Fish, travel, annoy my wife." He grinned. "Maybe consult a bit if you need advice on projects. But mostly, I'm done. Time for the next generation to take over." He glanced at Nathan, who was talking with some of the younger crew members. "He's got potential," Frank said. "Reminds me of you at that age. Same determination, same attention to detail. You did good raising that kid, boss." "I didn't do it alone?" "No, but you showed him what it means to build something that lasts. That's worth more than money." Frank left, and I promoted one of our senior foremen to replace him. The business kept growing, kept evolving, kept demanding more of my time and energy. Laura complained that I was never home, that I was working just as hard at 50 as I had at 30. She was right, but I couldn't stop. Not yet. Riverside sold in August for $18 million, exceeding our projections by $3 million. Combined with Monroe Street's $28 million, we'd cleared $34 million in revenue from properties we'd bought for $20 million. After expenses, our profit was somewhere north of $8 million. $8 million. More money than I'd made in the previous decade combined. We should celebrate, Laura said when I told her. Take a vacation. Greece, maybe. You've always wanted to see Greece. After we close on the next acquisition? There's going to be a next acquisition? There's always a next acquisition. She sighed, but didn't argue. She knew me too well. The next acquisition came from an unexpected source. Pacific Trust, a regional bank that had foreclosed on several commercial properties, contacted us about purchasing their distressed assets. They had a portfolio of 5 properties, office buildings, retail spaces, and one partially completed hotel that they wanted to unload fast. Nathan and I spent a week reviewing the portfolio. 3 properties were write-offs, too damaged or poorly located to be salvaged profitably. But 2 had potential, an office building in the city that needed renovations, and the hotel, which was 60% complete when the original developer ran out of money. What do you think? I asked Nathan after our final site visit. I think the office building is a straightforward flip. 6 months of renovation, maybe a year to find a buyer. The hotel's more complicated. Finishing construction could take 18 months, and then you've got to figure out whether to operate it or sell it. Operating it would mean getting into a completely different business. True. But the returns could be significant. Hotels in that area book solid occupancy. If we finish construction, furnish it properly, and hire competent management, we could pull in real money year after year. I studied my son. When did you become an expert on hotel economics? I've been reading, doing research. I figure if we're going to keep doing acquisitions, I should understand different property types. Pride swelled in my chest. That's good thinking. We made an offer to Pacific Trust, $12 million for both properties. They countered at 16. We settled at 14, which was still a steal given the potential upside. The office building renovation started in September. We gutted the interior, updated all systems, and modernized the facade. Nathan managed the project personally, proving his competence by bringing it in under budget and ahead of schedule. The hotel was more complicated. We hired an architect to assess what was needed to complete construction, brought in hotel consultants to advise on design and operations, and ultimately decided to finish it as a boutique property with 80 rooms. We're looking at $30 million to complete construction and furnishing, Tom reported, with projected revenue of $8 million annually once we're operational. So 4-year payback, assuming we hit our revenue targets. Approximately, yes. But Victor, this ties up significant capital for an extended period. Are you sure you want to commit to this? I looked at Nathan, who was studying the hotel plans with intense focus. What do you think? I think it's risky, but I also think if we're going to grow this business, we need to take calculated risks. The hotel market is strong. If we execute properly, this could be our flagship property. Our flagship property, I repeated, liking the sound of it. Okay, let's do it. Construction on the hotel began in October. I let Nathan take the lead, offering guidance when asked, but mostly staying back and watching him work. He was good at it, coordinating contractors, managing timelines, making decisions. He'd found his calling. Laura and I celebrated our 31st wedding anniversary that November with a quiet dinner at home. She'd wanted to go out, but I was exhausted from a week of crisis management at the hotel site. You're not fine. You're obsessed. The business has taken over your entire life. The business is my life, same as it's always been. No, it's worse now. At least when we were small, you came home at reasonable hours. Now you're working 70-hour weeks, chasing one acquisition after another, never satisfied with what you've already accomplished. I set down my fork. What do you want me to do, Laura? Quit? Sell everything and retire? I want you to find balance. I want you to remember that there's more to life than work. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like you've forgotten. We finished dinner in silence, the anniversary celebration soured by the same old argument. Later, lying in bed, I thought about what she'd said. Was she right? Had I become obsessed? Maybe. But I'd also built something extraordinary. Foster & Sons wasn't just a family business anymore. It was a real company with real assets, employing dozens of people. That mattered. That meant something, didn't it? Winter arrived early that year, bringing snow and complications. Construction at the hotel slowed, delays piling up as weather interfered with the schedule. Nathan handled it calmly, adjusting timelines and managing expectations. He'd grown into his role, no longer the uncertain kid trying to prove himself, but a confident manager who knew what he was doing. The hotel won't be finished until next summer, he told me in December. We're looking at a 6-month delay. Can we absorb the cost? If we're careful. The delays will eat into our projected returns, but will still be profitable. Then we keep going. Christmas that year was subdued. Nathan had started dating again, a nice woman who worked as an architect on one of our projects. Laura invited her to Christmas dinner, and she fit in seamlessly, laughing at Nathan's jokes and asking intelligent questions about the business. She wasn't Jessica. She was real, grounded, someone who appreciated what we'd built instead of scheming to tear it down. I like her, Laura said after dinner as we cleaned up in the kitchen. Me too. Think it'll last? I think Nathan's smart enough now to know what he wants, and what he doesn't. Thanks to you. You saved him, Victor. Whatever problems we have, whatever arguments, I want you to know that. You saved our son. I pulled her close, grateful for her words, for her understanding, for the 31 years we'd spent building a life together. The business was important, but she was right. There was more to life than work. I just needed to remember that.